I want you to imagine something. It's 2 a.m., your phone buzzes, and the name on the screen is your best friend. You smile, because that's what you do when your best friend calls, right? You answer, but what you hear on the other end destroys the next 3 years of your life. I'm not talking about a fight. I'm not talking about a misunderstanding. I'm talking about a betrayal so deep, so calculated, so personal, that to this day, when I hear that person's name, my chest still gets tight. What I'm about to tell you happened to me, and if you've ever trusted someone with your whole heart, you need to watch every single second of this video. Because the scariest thing about betrayal, it never comes from your enemies. It always comes from the person sitting right next to you. Think about that for a second. We spend so much of our lives protecting ourselves from strangers. We lock our doors, we guard our passwords, we're careful around people we don't know, but we leave ourselves completely open to the people we love. We hand them the keys to every room inside us, every fear, every dream, every secret we've never told another soul. We give them all of it because that's what trust feels like. That's what love looks like. You lower every wall and you say, "Here I am, all of me, and I trust you with it." And most of the time, that's beautiful. That's connection. That's what makes life worth living. But sometimes, just sometimes, the person you handed those keys to was never who you thought they were. Sometimes they were studying you from the very beginning, learning you, mapping every weakness, every vulnerability, every soft place inside you. Not because they loved you, but because they were waiting, patiently, quietly, deliberately waiting for the right moment to use everything you gave them. I know how dark that sounds. I know some of you are watching this and thinking, that could never be my person. My best friend would never do that to me. And I understand that feeling completely, because that's exactly what I thought. That was me. 100%. Certain. Unshakable. Absolutely convinced that this one person in my life was different from everyone else. I was wrong. And the night I found out just how wrong I was changed me in ways I'm still unpacking today. But I'm not telling you this story to scare you away from trusting people. I'm not telling you this to make you paranoid or cold or closed off. I'm telling you this because what happened to me taught me something that nobody ever talks about honestly. Something about loyalty, about identity, about the dangerous way we sometimes love people more than we love ourselves. So stay with me, because this story doesn't end in darkness. It ends in something much more powerful than that. But first, you need to know where it all began. We met when we were just kids, broke, dreaming, hungry for something bigger than the lives we were handed. He was the kind of person who made every room feel alive the moment he walked in. Magnetic is the only word for it. The kind of person people naturally orbit around. The one who always had a plan, always had the right words, always knew exactly what to say and when to say it. And I was drawn to that energy the way most people are drawn to fire. Warm, bright, impossible to look away from. From the very beginning, we just clicked. You know that feeling when you meet someone and it feels less like a new friendship and more like a reunion? Like some part of you recognizes them before your brain even catches up? That was us. Within weeks, it felt like we had known each other our entire lives. We finished each other's sentences. We had the same ambitions, the same frustrations, the same fire burning under everything we did. People around us used to say we were the same person split into two bodies, and I believed that. I genuinely believed that. I was loyal to him in a way I had never been loyal to anyone before. The kind of loyalty that doesn't ask questions. The kind that shows up at 3 a.m. without hesitation. The kind that defends someone even when you're not in the room, even when it costs you something. I would have walked through fire for this person, without stopping to check if the fire was real. That's how certain I was about who he was to me. We built something together over the years, late nights pouring everything we had into shared dreams. Sacrifices that only made sense because we were making them together. Promises that felt carved in stone, not written in sand. We had a saying between us, something we repeated so many times it became like a mantra. It's us against the world. And the thing about a phrase like that is it creates its own reality inside you. You stop seeing the cracks. You stop questioning the moments that feel slightly off because you've decided, deep down at a level below logic, that this person is permanent. That they are the one exception to every rule about people disappointing you. What I didn't understand then, what I couldn't see from inside all that love and history, is that some people are architects of closeness. They don't stumble into your trust. They build toward it deliberately. They ask the right questions, They remember every detail you share. They show up at exactly the right moments. They make you feel so deeply seen and understood that you stop protecting yourself around them entirely. And that's not an accident. That's a strategy. I'm not saying every charming person is dangerous. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying that I confused consistency with character. I confused history with honesty. Just because someone has been in your life for years doesn't mean they've been truthful for years. Time is not the same thing as integrity. Presence is not the same thing as loyalty. I wish someone had told me that before I learned it the hardest way possible. The signs were there. Looking back now with clear eyes, I can see every single one of them. The small moments where his story shifted slightly. The times he asked questions that went just a little too deep into territory that only benefited him. The way he sometimes looked at what I was building with an expression I couldn't quite name at the time. I can name it now. It was calculation. But back then, I translated everything through the lens of love and trust. So calculation looked like admiration. Envy looked like pride. Distance looked like he was just having a hard week. We tell ourselves the stories that protect the people we love. And sometimes those stories protect them all. The way until the moment. They no longer need protecting. I found out through someone else. Not him, never him. A mutual acquaintance pulled me aside one afternoon with that specific look on their face. The one that tells you before a single word is spoken that something is wrong. They said it simply, almost gently, like they were handing me something fragile. And in 6 sentences, they dismantled every assumption I had built my last several years on. He had been taking what I shared with him in private and using it. Conversations I thought were sacred between two people who loved each other had been carried elsewhere. Twisted, weaponized. Plans I had trusted him with. Strategies I had only ever spoken out loud to him had found their way into spaces where they could only have come from one source. From him. From the person I called my best friend. From the person I would have defended with my last breath. I didn't cry right away. I didn't scream or break anything, or fall to the floor the way betrayal looks in movies. I just went completely still. There's a specific kind of silence that happens inside you when something you believed in absolutely turns out to be false. It's not loud. It's the opposite of loud. It's the sound of an entire version of reality quietly collapsing. I drove home that night on autopilot. I sat in my car in the dark for a long time before I could make myself go inside. And then I did something I think a lot of people do in those first hours after betrayal. I went back through everything. Every conversation, every memory, every moment I had filed away under the category of proof that he was who I thought he was. And I started re-examining all of it with new eyes. And what I found was worse than the betrayal itself. The signs had always been there. Not hidden, not buried deep, just overlooked. Because I had made a decision a long time ago, probably without even realizing it, that this person was exempt from my skepticism. I had placed him in a category that said, this one I don't need to question. This one I just trust. And that decision, that one quiet, unconscious decision, had left me completely exposed for years. The grief that followed was unlike anything I had experienced before. People talk about heartbreak from romantic relationships, and that pain is real. I'm not dismissing it. But there is something uniquely devastating about losing a best friend to betrayal, because a best friend holds a different kind of real estate inside you. They know the version of you that exists before you perform for the world. They know your actual fears, not the sanitized ones you share at dinner parties. They know what keeps you up at night, and what you secretly hope for, and what wounds from your past you're still quietly carrying. When that person turns out to be something other than what you believed, you don't just lose them. You lose the safety of every vulnerable moment you ever shared with them. Every confession becomes a liability. Every secret becomes something that belongs to someone who was never really on your side. I fell apart privately. I kept showing up to my life on the outside, going through the motions, performing normalcy for everyone around me. But inside, I was dismantling. And the worst part, the part that took me the longest to admit even to myself, was that I started turning the anger inward. I stopped asking why he did it and started asking why I let him. Was I too trusting? Was I naive? Did some part of me see the signs and choose to ignore them because the alternative was too painful to face? That kind of self-interrogation is brutal because it doesn't have clean answers. The truth is complicated and uncomfortable and sits somewhere in the middle of multiple things being true at once. Yes, I missed signs. Yes, I loved someone more than the evidence warranted. Yes, I made myself vulnerable in ways that required the other person to be worthy of that vulnerability, and they weren't. All of that is true, and none of it makes what he did acceptable. None of it means the fault was mine. But sitting with the complexity of that, refusing to collapse it into a simple story where I was just an innocent victim and he was just a pure villain, that was the beginning of something real. Because here is what I eventually understood. The betrayal itself was one wound, but the way I responded to the betrayal, the isolation, the paranoia, the decision to close myself off from everyone, that was a second wound I was inflicting on myself. And unlike the first wound, this one I actually had control over. He had already taken enough from me. I was not going to let him take my ability to trust, to connect, to believe in people. That was mine, and I was going to fight to keep it. One night, maybe 3 months after everything fell apart, I was sitting alone at my kitchen table at something like 3 in the morning, the kind of late night where the whole world feels suspended and your thoughts get louder than usual because there's nothing left to distract you from them. And I asked myself a question that I hadn't been brave enough to ask before. Not why did he do this? Not how could he do this? But what is this trying to teach me? And that shift, that single change in the question, was the first real crack of light I had felt in months. Because here is what I realized sitting in that quiet kitchen. I had built my sense of safety on another person. I had taken everything that should have lived inside me, my confidence, my sense of worth, my belief in my own judgment, and I had outsourced it to a friendship. I had made one human being responsible for too much of my inner world. And that's not entirely about naivety or poor judgment. That's about something deeper. When we find someone who feels like home, we stop doing the work of being home to ourselves. We lean in so completely that we forget we were standing before they arrived. That's the conversation nobody wants to have about betrayal, because it's easier to make it a simple story. He was bad. I was good. He did wrong. I did nothing wrong. And look, I want to be clear. What he did was wrong. Full stop. His choices, his deception, his willingness to take my trust and turn it into a tool that is entirely on him. I am not standing here distributing blame, equally, or suggesting that being betrayed is somehow your fault. It is not. But healing, real healing, requires more than just correctly assigning blame. It requires looking honestly at the parts of yourself that the experience revealed. And what it revealed in me was that I had confused love with surrender. I thought being a loyal friend meant having no boundaries. I thought trust meant unlimited access. I thought closeness meant never questioning, never protecting yourself, never holding anything back. And those beliefs, as beautiful as they felt, left me with no floor to stand on when the relationship turned out to be something other than what I believed. So I started rebuilding, not the friendship, that was gone and it needed to stay gone, but myself. I started paying attention to how I felt around people rather than just what I thought about them. Feelings are faster than thoughts. Your body knows something is wrong long before your mind is willing to accept it. All those moments I had pushed down that quiet sense of something being slightly off, I made a promise to myself that I would never override that signal again, just because it was inconvenient. I started being more intentional about what I shared and with whom, not in a cold or calculating way, not in the way that turns you into someone who keeps everyone at arm's length and calls it wisdom, but in the way that understands privacy as self-respect. You do not owe anyone access to your deepest self simply because they've been present in your life for a long time. Depth of trust should be earned in layers, slowly, through consistent action over time, not granted all at once because someone makes you feel seen. I learned that forgiveness is real, but it is widely misunderstood. Forgiving someone does not mean welcoming them back. It does not mean pretending the damage didn't happen. It does not mean minimizing what they took from you or performing peace. You don't actually feel. Forgiveness is something you do entirely for yourself. It is the decision to stop letting someone who already hurt you continue to live rent-free in the most valuable real estate you own, which is your mental and emotional energy. I forgave him, and I never spoke to him again. Both of those things are true, and both of them are right. I learned that the version of me that existed before that betrayal was not a foolish person. She was a loving person, and loving people get hurt sometimes. That is not a design flaw. That is the cost of being someone who actually shows up for others, who actually means what they say, who actually believes in the possibility of real connection. The answer is not to stop being that person, The answer is to be that person with more wisdom, more discernment, more willingness to trust your own instincts when they're trying to tell you something. And I learned, maybe most importantly, that who you become after the worst moments of your life is entirely up to you. The betrayal happened to me, but the rebuilding, that was mine. Every choice I made on the other side of that pain, to stay open instead of closing off, to grow instead of harden, to keep believing in people while also believing in myself, enough to protect what matters. Those choices were entirely mine. Nobody could take them, not even him. So if you are in the middle of something like this right now, if someone you love just showed you who they really are and the ground feels like it has disappeared beneath you, I want you to hear this directly. You are not broken. You are not stupid for having loved someone fully. You are not weak for the fact that this hurts as much as it does. The pain is proportional to how real it was for you. And the fact that it was real for you, even if it wasn't real for them, says everything about your character and nothing about your worth. Give yourself the time. Do the uncomfortable work of looking honestly at what the experience is trying to show you. And then take everything you learned, every hard and painful and clarifying lesson, and build something with it. Build a version of yourself that is wiser without being colder, more discerning without being more distant, more protective of your peace without being less generous with your heart. Because in the end, that is the only real revenge that matters. Not making them pay, not making sure the world knows what they did, but becoming so grounded, so clear, so genuinely at peace with who you are, that their betrayal becomes the smallest chapter in a much larger and more extraordinary story. Your story, one that you are still writing.